I just wanted to give you a quick and dirty summary of the Augar report that's come out into further and higher education today. I'm only going to focus on the student finance elements, which is my bag, but it is a big report, so you should read it all. So the first point, arguably, this is the end of student loans. Augar has accepted our recommendation to change the name from student loans to a student contribution system, a far better description. It isn't a debt in the traditional sense. It's somewhere between a debt and a tax. You repay based on what you earn, and it wipes after a set time whether you've repaid it or not. And changing the name is crucially important because the current name puts people off and makes people make bad decisions. He's also accepted that the parental contribution system, the hidden parental contribution system, should no longer be hidden, it should be explicit, and that no changes should be retrospective. This will likely be called Plan 3 loans if they're put into place, and they'll start in the 21-22 academic year. But let's get on to those big headline proposals. Cutting tuition fees from £9,000 to, £9,250 to £7,500, and reintroducing the maintenance grant for those people from lower income households to replace some of the maintenance loan, the living loan. Well, what's interesting is, while I do think they will be psychologically beneficial and stop putting some people off, actually these changes are regressive compared to the current system, meaning they benefit higher earners. And that's somewhat counterintuitive, so I will try and explain it now. The point to understand is it doesn't matter whether you borrow £10,000, £50,000 or £5 million. What you repay depends solely on what you earn, because you repay 9% above a threshold, and you do that for currently 30 years. It's proposed 40 years. The only difference how much you borrow has is whether or not you will clear the loan within that 30 or 40 year period, and the total amount you repay if you do so. So, by cutting the debt, which is what lowering tuition fees does, and shifting towards a maintenance grant for some does, the only people who benefit, who actually feel a practical benefit in their pockets, are those who would clear the loan before it wiped, and they are the highest earning graduates. So while there's a psychological benefit for everyone, those two actually put more money into the pockets of the highest earning graduates, and there's a chart in there, I think it's 6.11 in the report, that shows you this. And not for lower earners, even though they may feel more relieved about going to university because there's less of a possible consequence. The next two changes in there that you won't hear as much about are, there's a proposal to cut the repayment threshold. In other words, people will start repaying loans on a lower income, and that means everybody who does repay loans will also repay more, roughly £180 a year more. And that the loan will now be wiped after 40 years if this comes in, rather than 30 years. Well, you combine those two and it means people pay more each year, and most people will repay for longer. And quite clearly that means there is a shift here in the burden. And again, the report shows it if you look at the charts. From the state to the individual, people will pay more in total for the cost of their education under this system, even with the lower tuition fees, even with the reintroduction of maintenance grant, on average. So, look, I think Augar, thankfully, unlike most politicians, does understand the system, and part of his remit was to try and cut the cost of the state, and he's done that. And perhaps if that is your aim, then he has done that in a way that's least damaging and least psychologically damaging to most people who go to university. But you need to be under no uncertain terms that if these changes come in the structure he's done them, rather than cherry picking, which could happen in our current weird political situation, then it does mean most people who go under this system will pay more than they do under the current system. I hope that explains it. For far more detail, read my guide on moneysavingexpert.com, where I go through it point by point what everything means.